Then a note about the refectory. As it gets very crowded on Monday evenings down there, we'd like to remind you that it is only available for those who stay for movements. Also, we'd be very grateful if you leave space at the table on the dais for those who organize the classes. This is...
You mean dais, don't you, Your Lordship?
Yes, I do.
It's the Indian looking.
Yes.
Now, just to stimulate some questions, we need to get off this obsession with the coarse material physical world, which is being so obtrusive and so troublesome at the present moment. We're all going through it on that level, and I'm afraid it's going on that way for a bit. But much more important are the subtle and the causal worlds. And may I give you an example? Is Nolan Hyde here? Oh, yes, he is. You've made it. Well, we have been traveling tremendous distances. We were told by the captain of the jumbo jet that it's 3,450 miles from here to Beirut, and that's about halfway to Delhi. And then beyond that, there's a 9-hour train journey, and beyond that, there's a hell of a taxi drive to the Shankaracharya. And it all takes tremendous time. And then you have a man like Nolan Hyde, who left Wellington, New Zealand, 6 days ago, something like that, and has been the other way around the world, looked in New York, looked in is a euphemism, made friends with the group there, and came here this morning. All these vast distances are being traveled. And yet, on the subtle level, you can be transported in thought in 1 minute into the presence of the Shankaracharya, just where we've been. In 1 minute, we can take you there. And in fact, his subtle influence has been extending to all these cities where there are people who know his teaching and meditate. And we must remind ourselves of this more, how important the subtle and the causal levels are, although they get very much left out of account. All right, but are there any, what do you want to hear about? That thing. What answers to questions, what would anybody like to discuss?
Lady Cohen asks, did you feel anything at that end of what people at this end were thinking, people in this room? Were you conscious of how much you were in their thoughts?
Well, you and I were just talking about this before we came up here, and how very much you'd been in our thoughts, and how there didn't seem to be any separation. And when we were talking together in our rooms, the hotel, many of you came into our discussion. And the trend of thought you were showing before we went away has kept us very close on that level, the level of thought. And that's on the subtle level. When one gets quiet, the mind is quiet. Between pulls on the mind this way or that way, during a quiet period between what he calls two desires, and deeper than that is the causal level, where there is no separation in space and no movement in time at all. Everything is there, always now. This is the thing which makes it difficult for us to understand the point from which the Shankaracharya is always speaking. Everything is here now. And all the movement is part of Maya, part of the illusion produced by the way we're made. Combination of senses and roving mind. But just coming gradually at the rest that one can get. When one operation is over, before one embarks on the next, is the way through to a wonderful world which we really never knew about before, which can be reached during meditation, which you'll be hearing about, because the meditation takes you through the different stages of consciousness, which are familiar to us, takes you through even samadhi, and maybe one doesn't know one's been through it, except just by a feeling of lightness and joy, to a place which is called Turiya, where creativity can take place. There one is united with the creative power of the Absolute. It's what we've all been longing for, but have never achieved, really, except for short moments. This has been the subject of our daily audiences. Not only the subject of discussion, but the subject of experience. Any questions?
Mrs. Reed said, is it only one special part of us which goes there?
No, it's when the whole of us is united in one, as one. It's like the servants, all the different functions we have, mental and physical, all becoming united under one master. So it's the whole of us goes there, good, bad, and indifferent. It's one of the two of the bits that we've chosen.
The moment you do make the effort, I mean, I'm sure we all know this in meditation, it puts up a barrier. And it is just this question, we've been told often, haven't we, that the last barrier is oneself, is one's knowledge of oneself that is meditating. And if one's going to cross that last barrier, there must be no knowledge, no movement, and a complete loss of any feeling of identity. Is it something to do with lightness of the heart?
That has a lot to do with it, yes. The mind maps the way, and for years and years we've been so-called going through mental training, and it's probably all been useful. But now we've been treated as if we were at the end of the tunnel, and that is completed through the heart. About questions, we were very grateful for the people who'd given us questions to take, and they were given full treatment. And we found the best thing was to wait until a given question fitted into the pattern of the conversation, which they inevitably did. Thus we answered two of John Sampson's questions early on, but his third question came right at the end. And all the questions that you gave us, and for which you'll be hearing the answers, are not for the person only who asked them, but for everybody connected with us throughout the world. And I'd like Alan to read a bit where this is referred to.
Shankaracharya said, the questions and answers here do not really belong to one individual. And we were saying that the word here is used once or twice in this passage.
Yeah.
We were saying, weren't we, that it really applies to the language, to the answers given here in this room too,
as well as to the answers he was giving in his private room. Yeah.
So, the questions and answers here do not really belong to one individual. A question is not for the individual, it is for the man, for every man. So, whatever one gets here could be used for any man, anywhere, any time. You can take the example of learning a language. The structure of a language is grammar. There are different types of root forms, verbal forms, and they are developed together with the noun forms, which we call form words.
Just as an example, there are several words based on the Latin word volvo, volutum. I mean, evolution, involution, revolution. A lot of nouns of this kind, volute in architecture. Many forms of this Latin root come into our language. But by paying attention to the root, you see that it all has to do with the repetition of cycles. Cycles of evolution, cycles of involution, cycles of revolution. By attending to the root, you connect together the central meaning of a great number of different words. I think that illustrates what he was talking.
And then these words attract certain endings so that they can be used in relation to person, gender, tense, etc. These declensions and conjugations, if you remember one form of declension, that will be applicable to all other verbal roots which have the same type of form. In the same way, if one knew about the answer for one particular man's problem, that sort of problem from any man could be tackled. The knowledge which one gets here must be recalled again. And the effect of all this recollection will automatically purify the mind. Then, when one is faced with the problem of any other man in the society or elsewhere, then you will see that this help which you get will be useful for anyone, anytime.
You get it? So a genuine question is worth its weight in gold, not only for the questioner, but for everybody else. That's why I'm asking for some now. needn't be philosophical or religious.
What was the pattern of your day in India? How long did you talk to Shankaracharya and so on?
Well, I think several of you would quite like to know that. We knew we'd been invited at a very busy time when this enormous festival is going on just near the ashram, where people come from all over India. And it lasts a month. And all the teachers of India have their tents and their adherents and following. And so the Shankaracharya, in honor of his tradition, enters into this public competition. And he definitely stole the thunder this time, because he had the best reciters of these Indian epics, morning and afternoon. He spoke himself for 20 minutes, half an hour. Enormous crowd. There were 1,500 in the tent where we were, and another 500 or so listening to the relay of the voice through the loudspeakers. So we knew that this would be the central occupation of the Shankaracharya and all his staff and people. And it's a very big staff. There were 20 people with these banners on the platform, and other servants and disciples of his sitting on the platform round him. How then could he possibly have time to see three small people like us? Well, he saw us every day, except one, which was a day when the peak point at the festival, when 400,000 pilgrims had bathed in the Ganges before dawn. And more crowds came in, more and more people flocked there. That was the only day he didn't see us. And so, to apologize for that, he put on a special show for us, where these professionals performed for us in the ashram, and for his people in the ashram, on our last night. Well, he seemed to be quite unhurried. On the average, we'd be there at the ashram at 9:30, to find him sitting in his own private room on his bed. He dispensed with all formalities. There were just three of us, 2 or 3 onlookers, and very close question and answer, very intimate, and 3 recording instruments taking everything down. And we haven't even had time to read it through, but if it hadn't been for Lord Allan, who typed indefatigably all the time from the tape recorder, and it was checked over by the translator each day, we'd still be very behindhand. But it's all here, and will be fed to you just as it is. So that took us till 11:15. And after that, our time was our own. So that's the kind of pattern, you see. Very cold nights, power cuts. Yes, we know about it. As the day dawned, the light and the heat would go off, and as the night fell, they'd come on again, on average. But there was this tremendous sunshine, which you don't have. It's very, very hot in the sun to sit and have cups of tea during the rest of the day. That's the sort of pattern. Plenty of time for meditation and so on. Each interview with the Shankaracharya started with 10, 15, 20 minutes of meditation.
Just a sec. Sorry. Oh, Lord.
Can you interpret that?
Well, it is written out. You wouldn't like to pass it out. Yes, do, because then we'll get it right. Somebody has written one out, and I think probably if
I
they take
think
the
it would
trouble.
better be read out.
Thank you so much. Thanks also.
Oh, it isn't all that long. I thought.
Oh, well. Do genuine and constant efforts towards enlightenment nullify difficult behavior patterns which have their origin, so psychological experts tell us, in early childhood?
In this case, the psychologists are quite right, and they have most of these patterns have their origin during the very impressionable period of our lives in early childhood. Some we bring with us when we're born, and those are difficult to take a long time to neutralize. About continual effort, I think that Allan and I agree. How does he put it?
Do genuine and constant efforts towards enlightenment.
Luckily, it's not necessary, because personally I can never make genuine and constant effort. I mean, it's an enormous thing. I mean, I might make a slight effort for 5 minutes once or twice a day. So unburden yourself of this idea. What is important is that when you forget the existence of this divine self, which is natural in the course of a busy day, it's also natural to remember that self, and the memory and the feeling of gratitude and the feeling of love for this self flickering through one at a moment in the course of the 24 hours does more than the attempt to make constant, arduous efforts from day to day. So it's just a question of remembering what one always knows, but one forgets.
If there'd been regular efforts, I think that would be nice.
The regular is very important. Quite right. Try, see if you can get up to half an hour's quiet twice a day. But any moment that the memory comes into your mind, try to realize where we'd be without the continual vigilance and loving care of this divine self.
Against the background of life as a cinema film, what is self-realization against that background?
There are several cinema houses and many films going on. The film of the physical life that we see on all the public media, that's one. And that's the thing that everybody sees. And in the general cinema house of the physical life. But each individual has a whole series of private films which he can see if he goes through to his own private cinema house. That. And beyond that, there's the creator and the realization that this creator is separate from all the films and all the cinema houses, which are just there for people's entertainment. And by being in touch with the creator, you can switch on to any film you might like for a given period. There isn't just one film of life. You see what I mean? There are, of course, physical films, and there are subtle films, and there is the cause of it all, which is beyond the film. The light which creates the film on the screen. Silent philosophical. Could you put it less tortuously?
No, I didn't. I mean, self-realization doesn't eliminate the film, but
No.
you know what's going on.
And can have choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're both accused of emanating a great deal of happiness. And was there anything in our visit which generated that particular?
Yes, very much so. There were these discoveries about what lay just ahead of what we're ordinarily so satisfied with. One should never be satisfied. One must always realize that there's something further just ahead like this. There's the extreme happiness we got from the simple statement of truth in few words and going straight to the mind and the heart. There's the happiness of the possibilities in almost any human relationship that one has. Casual people one meets, just anybody, and you will be told various examples of this, which we enjoyed during our stay there and which we enjoy when we're in London. All sorts of happiness which seem to stem from being taken under the cloak of a fully realized man with a great tradition and a system of meditating and a framework of knowledge. So there were great sources of happiness, and if we could only transmit in a happy way these eternal sources of happiness, that we'd be very satisfied with. I'd like to, I think, we were going to read this and then meditate a little. A bit which doesn't need much leading up to, right at the end of our visit. I asked, in trying to dedicate one's actions, thoughts, and feelings to the Paramatman, one finds that there's very much in one's thoughts that one couldn't possibly dedicate, and very much in one's words that one can't dedicate, and in the involuntary and stupid actions which one... But if one wants to do but he advises to be consistent and do what one says and say what one thinks. It's a very full-time job. And his answer was, in dedicating to the Absolute or to the Self, the most important part is played by the heart. And that is very simple. If that is properly attended to in its simplicity, all the rest shouldn't bother one, because nothing else is very important in relation to self-realization. One can see this from so many examples. Here is one. There was a great elephant, very proud of his strength and size. And he went for a swim in the river, but he was caught by a crocodile in midstream and dragged along until he is quite out of his depth and absolutely helpless. And just as he was about to drown, unable to do anything, he happened to see a lotus flower floating on the river, and reaching out with his trunk, he offered that flower to the Absolute. And the God, the Absolute, came running barefoot to save him from that crocodile. In fact, one may wonder, says the Shankaracharya, how one could dislodge the Absolute barefoot from his throne to run to one's rescue. By just a little flower. But it was not the flower, it was the spirit behind that flower. It is the heart which prayed for help. And he goes on with another story from the Ramayana, where King Rama's brother is called Lakshman. And in his life, it's described how when he was a child and was just growing up, he had a bit of a temper. And one day he got very angry. He took a stick and he broke all the chandeliers and all the glass things in the house and destroyed quite a lot in the palace. So it was reported to the king by the minister that today this naughty boy Lakshman, in very hot spirit, had done so much damage. The king told them to call the priest to celebrate the occasion, to open the doors of the treasury and distribute alms, and let's have some music and song. The minister was astonished and said, I hope I expressed clearly what Lakshman had been doing. He thought the king was just trying to be funny. But the king said, no, it's very nice to see that my son has grown up sufficiently and has got enough strength to do all these things. So, don't you think we should think of it as a day of rejoicing and have general jubilation all around? It says the Father, the Self, is not really interested in details of behavior. What he wants is a heart which is simple and direct. When that heart has been dedicated, everything will follow in course of time. And one needn't worry whether it is things are small or big or good or bad or efficient or not efficient. The real dedication to the self, the Atman, is of the heart. This is an answer to this business of constant and perpetual effort. And on that subject, Mr. Ufinsky pointed out that there were very comparatively few moments when one could transform negative emotions into positive. It was just when one had a cause for anger, a cause for worry, a cause for misery, that it was at that moment when one could dedicate the heart to the absolute. When nothing much is happening, one is indifferent and so on, nothing very much can be done. But at these moments, if you can convert negative into positive emotion, love, faith, hope, happiness, that is what takes one through the states of consciousness to real. And you're going to get plenty of opportunity in the next month or two. Do you think? Shall we then meditate for a few moments? Back to the memory of something far greater than all that goes on in the physical world around us. I'd like to follow that meditation with two questions from London about the heart. One is John Sampson's third question. When, for a while, ego is quiet and one's role is being naturally fulfilled, love seems to be the unifying force, and discriminating mind seems to work within it. Is this the right relationship? Yes, this is exactly what is meant by the unity of mind. He mentioned unity of three Indian words, which I haven't yet understood. But unity. That you should say what you think and do what you say. This is very much connected with the opening of the heart itself. And one reaches into the stream of the bliss through which everything is properly and nicely regulated, and one doesn't feel any difficulty in one's activities or one's relationship with people. The second question was one of Maurice Pickering's group, KS. How may the heart be opened? And he replies that when one brings to one's knowledge the different aspects of the glory and of the absolute, and then feels grateful for the bounty being provided to him as an individual, then immediately the heart melts. If one feels how little one is compared with the glory of the absolute, which is manifested all around, then that also will open the heart. So being grateful alone is the key to opening the heart. Rather like the healing of the 10 lepers in the Gospels, where one leper came back and expressed his gratitude. And about the question of not feeling any difficulty in one's activities or one's relationships with people. Before we actually met with the Shankaracharya, he made it very clear to both interpreters separately, one in the School of Economic Science and one not, that in future he wanted people to trust one or other of those, the leaders of those two organizations with their questions. He is now fully aware of the very different way of approach and conduct of the two, School of Economic Science and the Studies Society. Those who trust Mr. McLaren and put their questions to Mr. McLaren, they will be dealt with through Mr. McLaren's organization by His Holiness. And Mr. McLaren is going out there on the 14th of this month. Those who trust me enough to put their questions to me, realizing that I will relay them any that I feel inadequate about, and I feel inadequate about a great number, to the Shankaracharya, should do so. There should be no bickering or difficulties about this relationship. Is that fairly clear? His whole tradition is based on seeing only the leaders of all the different bodies, organizations, and so on, that have contact with him. And therefore he cannot attend to separate individuals or splinter groups or anything like that. But do trust us that here we will try and relay your questions which we can't answer to His Holiness, who is, by the way, inaccessible a great deal of the year. For instance, between now and Mr. McLaren's visit, he will be inaccessible visiting other cities. After Mr. McLaren's visit, he will be going up to the Himalayas for the summer. So we have people on the spot who tell us when he's around and when questions can be put. Is that understood? Anything else? Well, that's for now. And next week there'll be a smaller meeting, and we'd like to hear what you make of reading one, which are quotations from the leader of the School of Meditation in his recent visit to the Shankaracharya last November. The School of Meditation is a kind of junctional area, because the Studies Society and the School of Economic Science both founded it, and the leader of it is very friendly to both societies. And half of the School of Meditation are members of the School of Economic Science, but the other half come from the general public, and the head of it puts those questions to us, any that he wants about. So reading one gives an account of a very moving first audience that Mr. Whiting had in November.